I was begging. The official literally looked me in my eye and said in his language, only Ukrainians, that's all. That if you are black, you should walk.
We are students. We are
not allowing any black people to enter inside the place. We are all here.
There's been a lot of segregation and racism from the people who've managed to actually get to the passport control. It seems that there's a hierarchy of Ukrainians first, Indians second, Africans last. So there has been a lot of segregation.
And the stories that are coming out, the fact that Nigerians and Africans are being maltreated, are being maligned in getting them to safety, learned in all of this. And some of the videos have been going around about how Africans hate each other, how we still have the colonial mentality of the white superiority, and that has affected how we've developed our own continent. The fact that Africans like to eat Chinese, they go to travel in Dubai, they try to open accounts in Switzerland, they have to school in America, and Canada, and the UK, and never forget, and once they get rich, they do all those things and forget to develop their own land. So these are some of the issues that are coming up.
The third and concluding lesson that we're learning from Russia's invasion of Ukraine is Africa must no longer depend on the West. Africa should no longer depend on developed countries to come to their rescue. Now, there have been allegations, as well as video recordings, of discrimination against Africans. Now, when you take a look at those two recordings, you realize that, you see, the lady said, they said it plainly. It was said plainly by the security officials in Ukraine, those who are responsible for deciding who can get on the plane and who cannot. They said, look, who can get on the plane, who can get on the train, or who can get on the coaches and buses that were conveying people away from the war zone. If you're black, you can't get in. If you're black, you're not allowed in. In the other video, the other gentleman was even saying, and we've had so many other reports as well, some Africans being saying that they were being beaten, some were being abandoned in the cold. Of course, the weather over there, or their climate, is nowhere close to that of the tropics. And all these reports. So it was okay for Africans to come to Ukraine and study, because most of the Africans in Ukraine are students. But when it comes to the time of trouble, now they were being selective. The authorities or the security officials were being selective. Ukrainians only. Foreigners, no. And usually there are global principles and UN-endorsed guidelines that in time of war or in times such as this, you do not discriminate. You make sure that you provide assistance to all, not just your citizens, but to all. Because at that time, they're in the care and custody of your government. Africa, there's a lot for us to learn. If home was good, there will be no need for us to go and resettle elsewhere. Africa, it's time to develop our home and make it so conducive and enabling for us as Africans to prosper. For how long do we have to depend on developed countries? Some would even say, Pastor, Ukraine is not even a developed country. But yet, because of how deplorable things are at home, we're even going to other developing countries just to gain good quality education. It is shameful. Let me tell you what is even more shameful. Whenever there's a dispute, or whenever political entities in African countries are going at each other, or whenever somebody feels that they were not treated well or they are aggrieved, some politicians will even go on air, on camera, and say, I've written a letter to the United Kingdom. I've written a letter to the United States of America. I've written a letter to the House of Commons in England. I've written a letter to the Senate in America. I've reported the opposing political party. I've reported. How shameful! Get your house in order. Why are you running to these countries? Do you think these countries don't have their own issues? Do you expect these countries to neglect their own issues and attend to yours? Get your thinking cap on. And I don't just blame you, irresponsible politicians. I blame the people who voted you in. They got carried away with your charisma, but ignored your character. And in the words of a wise woman, charisma without character is caricature. You're a joke. You have failed the youth. You have failed generations unborn. Africa, get it right. We're always discriminated against, even though the Ukrainian government and the Polish government and those countries surrounding Ukraine, those that have been alleged to discriminate, have denied it. Do you expect them to accept it? Do you expect them to say, yes, it is true, we've been discriminated? Of course not. Our African brothers and sisters who did those recordings and posted them online for the world to see, could they have made it up? Of course not. We are perceived to be weak at home, and so we are treated as such abroad. According to Samuel Jonathan, how you are perceived will determine how you're received. How you are perceived will determine how you are received. The perception will always shape the reception. If Africa is perceived as the dark continent, and of course that is changing gradually, if Africa is perceived as a country or continent of beggars, if African countries are perceived as countries whose governments cannot take care of their own, we are going to be received in the same dimensions abroad. So when things like this happen, we will always be discriminated against. We will always be rejected because they believe we have no choice. A beggar has no choice. And they know that our governments will not come to our rescue on time. Look at the issue concerning the coronavirus vaccine. All those developed countries, all those nations in the West with advanced economies were first of all catering to their own people. They had millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of vaccines. In fact, if you combine them all, they had billions of vaccines, but would only give Africa what's left over. And in some cases, it was alleged that the vaccines that they had given were on the verge of expiring. We are relegated because we have not taken care of home. The most populous black country in the world, Nigeria, is about to have their elections in the year 2023. Are Nigerians going to repeat the same mistake? Are we going to repeat the same mistake? You put irresponsible people in government, you get irresponsible and undesirable outcomes, and then you start to complain. Going back to the illustration concerning the coronavirus, when it came time to giving a certificate or license to reproduce our own vaccines, I believe there was an issue in the news whereby the whole continent of Africa was given one license or one certificate. And they had to protest and say, wait a minute, we've got over 50 countries in Africa. We're not one country. Are you still in the dark ages where you think Africa is a country? We are a continent, and you want all the countries to just share one? And we have so much potential that is untapped. We have so much potential which, with the right leadership, can become performance. But we get carried away when it's time for elections, and we elect people in power, those who will never empower us. Africa, we must get it right. Because if we don't get it right, the perception that the rest of the world has of us will continue to shape the perception, shape the narrative, and will continually be relegated. There are black people in other parts of the world that are hoping that Africa can get it right. There are African Americans in the United States of America who are hoping that Africa, the motherland, can get it right. So that if anything happens, they can say, you know what? If we're not accepted here, we can always come back home. But we are repeatedly and continually messing things up at home. We keep on choosing and electing leaders who are self-centered, very selfish, and in some cases, heartless and oppressive. It's only their agenda, me, myself, and I, that they have as their focus. Let's get it right. And this is a challenge to Nigeria as well, as Nigeria gets ready for the 2023 elections. Don't get carried away with bogus promises. Don't get carried away with the bling. Don't get carried away with those tiny things they give away. Those things cannot sustain you. It is time for us to say, you know what? Until we can have a deep scrutiny of these individuals, before you can get my vote, no. You would have to prove beyond all doubt that you can deliver and you have a proven track record of delivering. We're not going to get carried away with party slogans or politics theatrics. I've spoken with passion today, folks. However, I'm still your loving pastor, and my name is Samuel Jonathan. I look forward to catching up with you at the next episode of Movie Preach.
There are books that you read and enjoy for the moment, and there are books that make an impact for a lifetime. Such are the books written by Pastor Samuel Jonathan. Some of the titles include Step Forward, The Half-Mark Christian, Naming Your Child the Godly Way, Wisdom and the Fool, My Obedience Journal, Looking Through the Spectacles of God, The Careless Christian, and soon to be released, Stubbornness, The Red Carpet for Destruction. These books are purposely written to infuse, impact, and influence your walk with God for a lifetime. They come in ebook and paperback. Get yours today.